Bührer, welcome to the Executive Talk. You have been Advertiser of the Year twice, so you obviously know the trade. If you had to do an advertisement for you personally, what makes you special in what you do? How would you explain it?
I think personally I'm kind of a detective, or the way I work is kind of like a detective, because I love to really dive deep into a case, or dive deep into a case for a brand or for a company, and really find out what is going on, what could be done differently, where the problems lie, and find approaches on how to solve them.
So in a way, detective is probably the right word. You are a researcher as much as you are a communicator. I mean, if you have a case, you really go very deep, and that's what people say as well. You're almost you dive into it, and you really want to know everything about the topic. Is that the kind of your work approach to every case you have?
Well, usually when we're talking about bigger projects, of course, when we're talking about this approach, but usually I find it just extremely satisfying for myself, also for our company, but also for our clients, for the brands that we're working for, when we have this approach on solving a strategic problem for the long term. Then you have to do the deep dive. You have to do it at least once to completely understand the landscape, to completely understand the competition, the brand's history, and the customer base, and maybe also find out why some people are not customers and what's holding them back. And I feel like this analysis you have to do once and extremely thorough, and then you can check it each year, or maybe in a different cycle depending on the brand. But you have to do the deep dive. If you don't do it, it will always haunt you, and you will never have a solution that is really solving a problem. That's why I believe in that approach.
Is that something specific to this industry? That, of course, if you work in the industry, you know that. But a lot of people might just think, yeah, a catchy slogan, that's probably enough. And then you don't have to work on that. You know, it's just some people very kind of eager to have that one slogan and that one campaign that goes well. But it's way more. If you do advertising, if you do communication, it's a kind of a 360 approach for you.
It's absolutely a 360 approach, and also a lot of it has to do with what kind of energy is within a company, what's holding them back to develop new product, what's holding them back to be more innovative, or how can we make the story of the brand into a story that also goes out and reaches out to the consumer. I feel like you have to look at the whole picture. And also, oftentimes at the beginning of a strategic process, you have to find out if you as a person, or as an advertising agency, if you click with your client. And in the cases where you click with your client and they allow you into the whole company, into the whole brand, those are usually the cases where you know you're going to create more than a slogan. You're going to actually add value and create a lot of change for that company for the better.
Does that mean you have to like the client, or do you have to like the product, or to put it differently, have you already said no to something because it just didn't click, or you thought, I don't want to work for those people?
I think a lot of it is personality based, but as a professional you often have to step back and say, or find out where you draw the line. But I think in general it helps a lot when you like the people, but when they're not your best friends. Because you're not that honest to your best friends, you usually are already overstepping a bit of a professional distance, but you have to feel like you're on the same page, that you are a team, and the client also has to feel like you're fighting with them and for them and not against them. So it helps to be friendly with each other, and also it helps a lot when you associate with that brand and you feel like you can add value, you understand the topic, or yeah, you can add value.
You've been in the business for quite some time, and you've known plenty of cases, plenty of clients. Are you still excited when there's a new client looming, or someone coming to you with a product or an idea that you think I can bring that client way further than he is now? I mean, do you still have that excitement that you had in the beginning, for example?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I love it when I encounter a new challenge. I love it when I feel like I'm allowed into a company's core
inner circle,
when I can actually step inside and get to the root of their problems and try to help them. That excites me very much. And usually, but that's just the new business side. But I think as much as new clients excite me, I also have a strong heartbeat for clients who have been with us since our foundation. That's 12 years ago, and some of them have been with us 12 years. So that's pretty exciting as well, to stay with someone and follow their development all the way.
Since you speak about the company, and it's still a quite young company, if you look at it, very successful. You were late 20s when you founded it with two of your colleagues. You have been working for the big names in the industry before. Why did you decide to change? Did you want to be an entrepreneur? Did you want to be independent in a way? Were you fed up with bosses you didn't like? Or what was the main reason, the main trigger?
The main trigger was not frustration, it was more passion or sort of a joy to create something of your own. And at the time when we founded our company, we were three partners, and we still are three partners. When we founded our company, we thought, the three of us thought, that there aren't many advertising agencies out there that are modern enough or that are integrated enough to solve contemporary clients' problems. So we tried to choose a different setup. We were one person strategy, which is me, someone for PR side and someone for the digital creative side. The three of us, we were the core of the company, and we sort of felt like we would have a different proposition in the market to develop campaigns out of this setup. And out of this setup we grew and grew, but it's still at the core that we want to solve clients' problems in terms of a strategic aspect, solve them creatively, but also try to create campaigns that will work with the media and not against the media, and that will create a lot of earned media. Yeah,
and a lot of buzz as well. And some wrote about Rod as being the first agency, maybe for the social media, for the digital native generation. In that regard, did you you were probably at the right time, at the right place, with your three talents combined together. So is there a question, or is there a kind of a portion of luck in there as well, that you think right at that time I was probably at the right time of your life as well?
Yes, absolutely, because sort of coming up with the agency for a modern age, you also feel like you have to associate with the topics that are going on. You have to associate with how people are interacting with media right now. You sort of cannot look back at it the way we have been doing it for 20 years. You actually have to sort of trust into the future and always remain excited on how the future can develop. So in a way, it's a tough job because it's never going to stand still. Things are always moving forward, and that they're always moving into a direction. But for me, it's not. I wouldn't want to do anything else. I find it so exciting, and the way things are shifting and moving, it sort of keeps you happy and healthy.
Does it worry you as well? Because when you started, you said it yourself, the advertising was maybe a business of elderly men mainly. You might be at the point as well in 10, 20 years that you see the younger ones coming up as well, and you almost being a little bit old-fashioned with your approach. I mean, does that bother you, or do you think you can change and adapt all the way through until you're 65 or 70?
The young ones are already here.
They're pushing.
I'm already the old one in our advertising agency.
With around 40.
Yes, I'm already the old one. But I mean, I think the point is that you have to develop a capacity to listen to what the younger ones are saying and take them seriously with their input. And when they say, okay, no, that's not going to work in social media, you cannot be the old boss who says, well, we have been doing this for ages, because you always have to sort of trust the people you work with who are experts in their fields. And sometimes these experts just don't look like experts the way we regarded experts. They can be from any walk of life, but you have to sort of find the talent that you trust in. And sometimes they're 25, they're 27, but when you listen and you think they really have a point, you add your knowledge from before and you combine it together into something that will be sustainable and actually efficient for a client. And I think those are solutions that carry.
Having said that, you are a team of about 30 people here in the agency. You are one of the bosses. How would you describe yourself as the executive, as the boss, and someone who has to make sure that the business goes along? Are you very strict? Do you let them on the long leash, or how would you describe your management principles?
Well, first of all, I think it's a principle of we do it together. So it's always a team effort, but it's very clear in our team structure who's doing what and when. Strategy comes first, and creative comes second, together with the whole media and public relations side. So we try to really find the basis, the fundament first, and then develop ideas around that very quickly. Together with our amplification team, try to make it bigger, create the buzz that we were talking about before. But it also means that you have to trust each other, and you have to have sort of a proven concept on when what is going to happen, because we need to be efficient in how we do it, because we always have one more step in our agency when we communicate or when we develop campaigns, as opposed to other agencies. We always do the check: will it work with the media? Will it work in social media? How can we create the buzz? This is sort of an additional element into a campaign orchestration, which needs some time. So we need to be quicker with ideas and quicker with the strategy. So
when you talked before about being very strategic, very analytic, so I take it that core thing comes a little bit from you. Have you always been like that? Because when I read older interviews, it's always about how much you worked, how you probably worked day and night at some campaigns. You were always very, very maybe ambitious in a good way. You were always very driven. Have you been like that already as a 20-year-old starter in the ad industry? Is that something completely you?
Yes, it is very much me, but I cannot do it the way I used to do it at 20. I don't have the energy anymore. I have children.
So you don't work nights anymore?
No, I cannot work all night, but sometimes I work nights as well. But of course, after 20 years of working in the industry, I don't need the 48-hour diving into a project and then maybe finding a track or trace that could be interesting. I'm much quicker now with that. I have more, how do you say, I have more cases, I have much more examples that I can sort of
experience in a way.
Yeah. I can access more experience, and that makes me faster in terms of like sort of finding a solution. So the process where I needed to work on sort of a brand analysis for a week maybe, that boils down now to a few hours. But they're informed hours, they're prepared hours, and that's an important lesson to learn in life, because otherwise you're going to burn through, I believe.
But when you say that, can you be lazy as well? Because if I read what you've done, and even if you weren't working in the industry, you were doing plenty of different jobs. You worked in a kitchen, you worked as babysitter, as a journalist, you name it. I think it's 5 to 10 things I read about you. Have you ever been not doing anything, or being lazy, or just at home and saying, yeah, I don't feel like working today?
I'm not.
You can't remember, you see.
No, I can absolutely remember. I'm not a good lazy person, I have to say. I'm very, very bad at being lazy. And actually, I think my husband would probably underline that there are no days where I'm not doing anything.
Okay.
But
And the head always works.
That doesn't mean that I'm always at my computer and I'm always working, not at all. But when I'm being lazy, for me that means cooking a really big meal for my family, being creative in the kitchen or playing with the kids or doing sports or blah, blah. That's my interpretation of doing nothing. I just don't know the situation on lying on the couch for 12 hours doing nothing. That's not my ideal of how I want to spend my life.
When you look at your life, I mean, it's fair to say, as we said before, in your 20s you achieved a lot, you worked a lot, and that's also a reason why you wrote the book actually last year about how to achieve something in earlier years, and you highly advised young women in that book that you should do as much as you can in your 20s and before you get a family and before you get settled too much. So that was one-to-one your personal experience that you put in the book, and you wanted to have that knowledge to young women because you were lacking that at that time. Is that right?
That was my motivation to write the book. Yes,
Yeah.
I very much believe that there isn't much literature out there for women who want to achieve something in their business life. I felt like the current literature is usually management advice from people you, as a young woman, you don't very much associate with, and I felt like there is a lack of transportation of knowledge and of experience, and especially women who have achieved a certain point in their career. In my opinion, aren't sharing enough how they got there and what their stumbling blocks were. And I felt like I wanted to contribute my part to say what was really hard and how I got around it, because a lot of it is luck in your career and a lot of things are just trial and error. But I think at the end of it, whatever we can share to advance together, that's extremely important.
Is it also a question of self-confidence, that you feel that young women lack that sometimes, and that maybe the young man is picked because he can sell himself better than a young woman can?
I think self-confidence is probably at the root of many issues that we're facing today, with pay equality, with asking for what you want, with sort of just daring to stand into a room full of men who are in charge and have the money and the power and speaking your mind. I feel like a lot of it has to do with self-esteem and self-confidence, and I feel like that's sort of one nudge that I can give to young women. If you don't have that self-esteem right now, you have to take it in baby steps and develop it, because it's not going to develop overnight. But it's one of the things, if you work quite hard and you try a lot of things and find out what matches best to you and your personality in terms of self-confidence, what gets across in a sympathetic way, I feel like within 10 years you can do so much. But oftentimes we miss the perspective that actually it's quite a long time, it's quite a long race that we're in here, and we can do a lot of trial and testing as people as well.
Is this industry a sexist one as well? Because there are some industries where you say, okay, if a man says something, it's people believe it more than when a woman does. I have the impression maybe the advertising industry is a bit more open, but maybe that's a cliche.
I don't believe that the advertising industry per se is a sexist one. I think we're quite open to ideas wherever they come from, and at the end of the day, it usually doesn't really matter who had the idea. But it's at the same time extremely important, especially for women, that they take the credit if they had the idea and not just pass it on as, oh, that was actually my sentence, but who cares?
Okay, yeah.
That's one of our other issues. But I feel like our industry is quite open, and I think I'm one of the examples that show that you are welcome no matter what age, no matter what gender.
When you look back at your career, and then you're still young, you still have 20 or 25 years ahead of you, would you do something differently? When you look at where you are at the moment, where you are now, do you think you could have done, coming back to the book as well, when you were in your 20s, you could have done something differently that would have helped you a bit more?
I think if I had done something differently, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So in my logic, and I'm happy where I am, I don't want to change that much. But if I could go back, or maybe if I can go forward, which I can, sometimes I just wished I would have studied psychology or social anthropology. That would have been my dream as sort of a young person. But at that time, I also had no patience to study either one of those.
You wanted to work right away.
I wanted to work right away, and that was a conscious decision. And I don't regret that. But I feel sometimes looking forward, wouldn't hurt to study psychology. But then again, working, you also study psychology, but just in a very different way.
I mean, in a way, what you're doing now, I just wanted to say, that's a lot of psychology, it's a lot of anthropology in there as well. You want to know how people live. There's a famous example, I think you did something for IKEA.
Yes.
And you wanted to know how the Swiss live, so you went into their kitchens. So again, that research, that analytical, you can do that on an everyday basis, I guess.
Absolutely. That's actually one of the things when I think about my life forward, I want to work on more of those projects, not less. And I don't want to have other people do them for me as well. I want to do that myself, because I think there's nothing more interesting as looking at people's lives and sort of comparing how they live it differently, and also comparing where it's all the same. And it's so similar, and there are patterns, and people are just so exciting and fascinating for me. And I love how weird we are sometimes as a human race, and sort of discovering those nuggets and making something out of it for our clients. That's so exciting. And I believe that as our society is sort of moving not towards each other, but in various ways, moving sort of away from each other and then coming back together. I think it's so interesting to sort of stay on those developments and actually understand what makes our country tick.
I was just thinking, you know how the Swiss tick, and because you can analyze them pretty much better than other people can. Are you sometimes frustrated about how easy people are, or how easily readable they are? There's a funny story. I read it somewhere. If it's not right, please correct me. That your father once told you, who was working in the water industry, right? For a town, that he told you everybody's using water at 10:30 at night because the daily news is over, and then they'll go to the toilet. And that's when you realize people are not that special. They all work in the same way, and if you do communication as you do, that must be a bit frustrating, no? That you feel that people they all behave the same way in a way.
I don't find that frustrating because, I just love those discoveries. When someone from a completely different area, like my father with the waterworks, when he tells me something, I think, oh, that's interesting. What could we do with that? Or what does that lead? You know, how could that be integrated into advertising, into communication?
So you see the next step already.
I always see the next step, and I always feel like, if we have that pattern, what other pattern do we have that we could tap into and use? And I don't find it frustrating. I find it sometimes, for me, that's sort of, it makes me feel like we're just part of something all together, and we're not that different. But we have our differences, and both are extremely interesting to research. What makes us similar and what makes us so different.
Are you the same way? Are you easily bought? Are you easily susceptible to advertising, or are you a little bit more analytical in that regard as well?
Well, I mean, it's probably like a déformation professionnelle, that you feel like you look at an advertising and you don't just take it as a piece of information that wants something from you, but rather you see
the thought
how did
behind,
they do
right?
it, what do they want to get out of me, and how has that brand transformed? You see sort of all the ingredients, and you try to find out how you could maybe copy a little bit of that or do something better with it. But I think I'm not so easy as an advertising target, but sometimes I'm very easy as an advertising target.
Regula Bührer, thank you very much.
Thank you.